Millionaire invited X to his wedding to see her suffer, but she arrived with triplets who looked like them. Nathan Brooks' cell phone vibrated incessantly in his pocket as he walked through the lobby of the newly opened Meridian Palace Hotel in Miami Beach. Wearing faded jeans and a basic white t-shirt, no one would have guessed that this 35-year-old man was the CEO of one of the largest luxury hotel chains in the United States. "Mr. Brooks, we need your approval for the new project in Las Vegas," said the last message from his executive assistant. Nathan took a deep breath, ignoring the notification. For the first time in years, he didn't want to be Nathan Brooks, the hotel magnate. Today he was just Nathan Miller, a writer in search of inspiration for his next book. The plan was simple: spend 2 weeks staying in his newest venture, evaluating every detail of the service without anyone knowing his true identity. The idea came about after receiving some online criticism about the service at the chain's hotels. "Staff only work hard when they know they're being evaluated," said one of the comments that kept popping into his head. "Welcome to the Meridian Palace Hotel, Mr. Miller," the receptionist smiled, handing him his room key card. "Miss Rachel Mitchell, our events manager, has organized a welcome cocktail for guests this evening on the rooftop. We look forward to seeing you." Nathan thanked her with a discreet nod, picking up his suitcase without accepting the messenger's help. In the elevator, he looked at his reflection in the mirror. His dark brown hair, normally perfectly combed, was deliberately messy. An untrimmed beard completed the carefree look he had meticulously planned. Room 1507 was exactly as he had designed it: elegant, without being ostentatious, comfortable, without losing its luxury. After a quick shower, Nathan decided to explore the hotel before the cocktail party. In the spa lobby, a discussion caught his attention. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson, but we can't just cancel the whole event 2 hours before it starts," a firm but gentle female voice echoed through the room. Nathan approached discreetly, observing the scene. A woman in her 30s with red hair, in an elegant bun, and wearing an impeccable navy blue suit, was facing a visibly upset customer. It was Rachel Mitchell, the events manager he only knew from reports and photographs of corporate meetings. "My daughter has a fever. How do you expect me to attend a business dinner in this condition?" The client gestured emphatically. Rachel kept her composure, her green eyes conveying a calm that Nathan instantly admired. "I understand your situation perfectly, Mrs. Henderson. What I can do is rearrange the event for tomorrow night at no extra cost and arrange a private doctor for your daughter immediately." Rachel's proposed solution not only calmed the client down, but also demonstrated a problem-solving ability that impressed Nathan. He watched as she made calls, rearranged her schedule, and turned a potentially disastrous situation into a demonstration of service excellence. Later during the cocktail party on the rooftop, Nathan found the perfect opportunity to get closer. Rachel was alone near the bar, checking something on her tablet. "Gin and tonic," he offered, holding out a glass. She looked up in surprise. "How did you?" "Pure guess," Nathan smiled. "Or maybe I noticed that you ordered one a few minutes ago and haven't had a chance to drink it, too busy solving crises." Rachel accepted the drink, studying him curiously. "You were at the spa this afternoon." "Guilty," he admitted. "I was impressed with your handling of the Henderson situation." A slight blush tinged her cheeks. "Just doing my job." "Rachel Mitchell," she introduced herself, holding out her hand. "Nathan Miller," he replied, feeling a twinge of guilt at using the false surname. "Writer, or at least trying to be one." The conversation flowed naturally as the sun set over Miami Beach, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rachel talked about her passion for hospitality, her dreams of one day managing her own establishment, unaware that she was opening up to the owner of the chain himself. "What brings you to Miami?" she asked, genuinely interested. Nathan hesitated for a moment. "I'm doing research for my next book. About people we meet in hotels, the stories each guest carries." "Sounds fascinating," Rachel smiled, checking her watch. "Oh, excuse me, I need to check on the preparations for tomorrow's executive dinner. Or rather, what would have been dinner tonight." "Of course, I don't want to take up your time," Nathan replied, watching her walk away. Alone again, Nathan contemplated the view of the illuminated city. The guilt of lying to Rachel weighed heavily on his chest, but there was something about her that intrigued him deeply. It wasn't just her professional competence, but her authenticity, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her work. His cell phone vibrated again. 3 more missed calls from the board of directors, and an urgent email about the expansion in Chicago. Nathan sighed, aware that his real life continued to demand attention. But something inside him knew that these 2 weeks at the Meridian Palace would be much more than a simple quality inspection. As he walked back to his room, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about Rachel. How would she react to discovering his true identity, and more importantly, how could he objectively evaluate her work now that he was inexplicably attracted to her personality? The sound of his cell phone cut through his thoughts again. It was time to make a decision: continue with the disguise and explore this unexpected connection with Rachel, or reveal his identity and maintain the professional distance his position demanded. Nathan chose the silence of a cell phone, at least for now. A few lies he thought might be necessary to uncover some truths. The next morning, Nathan woke up to the gentle sound of the waves of the Miami Sea crashing against the sand. His phone showed dozens of unread notifications, including an urgent message about problems with suppliers at the hotel in Chicago. For a moment, he felt the familiar weight of responsibility on his shoulders, but decided to stick to his cover. He went downstairs to have breakfast in the hotel's main restaurant, carefully observing every detail of the service. The maitre d' led him to a table overlooking the pool, where he noticed Rachel supervising the setup of a corporate event. She looked different in the morning, more relaxed, with loose red hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, yet still maintaining her professionalism in her well-cut gray blazer. "Mr. Miller," she greeted him as she passed his desk. "I hope you slept well." "No better," he replied, trying to ignore how her genuine smile affected him. "And from the looks of it, your day has already started in full swing." "Oh, this," she gestured towards the event area. "Just an executive breakfast for 50 people that was ordered. Let me see, 2 hours ago." Nathan felt a twinge of guilt. As CEO, he knew that last-minute requests were a logistical nightmare, but Rachel seemed to handle everything with a natural grace that impressed him more and more. "Can I keep you company for a few minutes?" she asked, surprising him. "I need a break from the chaos, and you seem like a good distraction. I mean, good company." The blush on his cheeks, as he realized the slip, made Nathan smile. "I'd be delighted." Over coffee, Rachel shared stories about her career in hospitality, starting as a receptionist in a small hotel in Boston and working her way up to her current position. Nathan drank in every word, fascinated not only by her background, but by the passion with which she spoke about her work. "And you," she asked, "how did you decide to become a writer?" Nathan hesitated, but years of experience in negotiations helped him to improvise. "I've always liked observing people, understanding their stories. In every hotel, every restaurant, there are thousands of narratives waiting to be told. Like mine trying to manage impossible events," she joked. "Exactly," he laughed. "Speaking of which, do you have any plan for tonight? I'm thinking of exploring the city a bit, and it would be great to have a local guide." Rachel seemed to consider for a moment. "I don't normally go out with guests," but she bit her lower lip thoughtfully. "I suppose an exception wouldn't hurt. I know an amazing place in South Beach." The rest of the day passed tortuously slowly for Nathan. Between secret conference calls in his room and notes on necessary improvements to the hotel, he found himself constantly thinking about the evening's meeting. His guilt over maintaining his cover grew in proportion to his attraction to Rachel. At 7 in the evening, they met in the lobby. Rachel had exchanged her business suit for a casual navy blue dress, and Nathan had to make an effort not to stare for too long. The restaurant she had chosen was a small Cuban establishment hidden among the modern buildings of South Beach. The intimate atmosphere and soft music created the perfect setting for an evening that promised to be memorable. "How did you find out about this place?" Nathan asked, impressed by the authenticity of the place. "I ended up here by chance during my first week in Miami," she explained, her eyes shining in the candlelight. "I was lost, stressed, and hungry. The owner, Carlos, served me the best ropa vieja I've ever eaten and gave me advice on how to survive in this city." The conversation flowed naturally, navigating through various subjects from literature to travel dreams and professional challenges. Nathan was surprised at how easy it was to be himself, even though he kept his true identity a secret. "You know," Rachel commented as they walked along the beach after dinner, "there's something about you that intrigues me, Nathan Miller. You have this look, like you're carrying a secret." His heart raced. "We all have our secrets, don't we?" "I suppose so," she replied, pausing to watch the waves. "But some secrets can prevent us from experiencing true moments." The closeness between them was magnetic. Nathan could smell Rachel's soft perfume, see every delicate freckle on her moonlit face. The perfect moment for a kiss was there, tangible. His phone vibrated violently in his pocket, breaking the spell of the moment. It was a message from the financial director about an urgent decision that would directly affect the Meridian Palace. "Sorry," he muttered, putting the phone away without reading the full message. "Work? I thought writers had more flexible hours," Rachel commented with a curious smile. "It's complicated," was all he could reply, feeling the weight of his lies piling up. On the way back to the hotel, Nathan struggled internally. How could he continue to build something meaningful with Rachel on a foundation of lies? But how could he reveal the truth without destroying the genuine connection they were developing? As they said goodbye in the lobby, Rachel hesitated for a moment. "Thank you for the evening, Nathan. It was different. Special. Different special or different strange," he joked, trying to mask his own unease. "I'm still deciding," she smiled, leaning in to give him a soft kiss on the cheek before walking away towards the elevators. Nathan stood in the lobby for a few minutes, watching his reflection in the glass doors. The man he saw there was no longer just Nathan Brooks, the CEO, nor completely Nathan Miller, the fictional writer. He was someone in the middle of the road, discovering that sometimes we need to lose ourselves in order to truly find ourselves. The morning sunlight found Nathan in his makeshift office on the suite's balcony, analyzing financial reports on his laptop, while trying to maintain the appearance of a writer to any passing employee. The notifications from the night before revealed a delicate situation. The Meridian Palace was facing significant budget cuts that could directly affect the events department. His phone rang, displaying the name of Marcus Reynolds as financial director. "Nathan, we need a decision on the cuts by tomorrow," Marcus said bluntly. "The events department is running 30% over budget." The irony of the situation did not escape Nathan. It was Rachel's department that was under scrutiny, and he needed to make a decision that could directly impact her work. "Give me 24 hours, he replied, ending the call, when he saw Rachel crossing the hotel garden below his balcony. She walked with purpose, gesturing animatedly as she spoke on the phone. Even from a distance, Nathan could sense her contagious energy. Rachel stopped near the central fountain, writing something down on her tablet, and he wondered how someone could make even the most mundane tasks seem so captivating. Determined to better understand the situation in the events department, Nathan went down to the lobby. He found Rachel in the main hall supervising the setup of a wedding. "Good morning, mystery writer." She smiled when she saw him, and Nathan felt that familiar tightness in his chest. "Looking for inspiration for your book?" "Always," he replied, watching the team at work. "Impressive how you coordinate all this." Rachel sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's not always easy. I just heard that we need to cut costs on all the events this month. Apparently we're over budget." Nathan felt his stomach turn. "And how do you intend to deal with that?" "Honestly, I have no idea," she admitted, guiding him to a quieter corner of the room. "I have 3 weddings, 2 corporate conferences, and a gala party in the next few weeks. Cutting costs means compromising on quality, and that," she shook her head, "that goes against everything I believe in." The passion in her voice made Nathan question the coldness of the figures in his financial reports. As CEO, he always made decisions based on data, but Rachel was showing the human side that these numbers didn't reveal. "Maybe you could show me how it all works," he suggested, seeing an opportunity to better understand the situation. "You know, for the book." Rachel's eyes lit up. "How about a behind-the-scenes tour? I can show you how we turn dreams into reality, even on a shoestring budget." Over the next few hours, Nathan watched Rachel in her element. She knew each member of her team by name, understood the specific needs of each event, and most impressively, had developed creative methods to optimize resources without compromising quality. "See those flowers?" She pointed to an elaborate arrangement. "We work with a local supplier who allows us to reuse the flowers at different events during the week. We save 40% on the decoration budget this way." Nathan made mental notes, beginning to realize that the figures in her reports didn't tell the full story. "And here," she continued, leading him into the kitchen, "we've implemented a planning system that has reduced food waste by 60%. Our chef can adapt the menus to make the most efficient use of ingredients." As he followed her through the hotel corridors, Nathan found himself increasingly involved not only with the operational efficiency Rachel demonstrated, but with the way she humanized every aspect of the job. You know what worries me the most, she confessed during a coffee break? It's not the numbers, it's the people. Each event represents a special moment in someone's life. A wedding, a graduation, a professional achievement. I can't just treat these as lines on a spreadsheet. Nathan felt the weight of his words like a punch in the gut. As CEO, how many times had he done just that? What about your team? He asked, trying to keep his composure. They're like family. Rachel smiled, looking fondly at two passing employees. Maria, over there, for example, is paying for her daughter's college with her salary from here. And James, our lighting technician, is looking after his sick mother. They're not just employees, they're stories, dreams. Nathan's phone vibrated again, another urgent email about the budget cuts. The pressure to make a decision was mounting, as was his guilt for keeping Rachel in the dark about his true identity. Rachel, he began about to confess everything, but was interrupted by a shout from the main hall. Miss Mitchell Hamilton, wedding emergency. Rachel quickly apologized and rushed off to solve the crisis, leaving Nathan alone with his conflicting thoughts. He watched her in action, solving the problem with a mixture of efficiency and empathy that seemed to be her trademark. That night in his room, Nathan stared at the financial spreadsheets on his laptop, Rachel's words echoing in his mind. How could he balance the needs of the business with the human impact of his decisions? His phone rang again. Marcus again. Nathan, we need that decision. The investors are pressing. I know, he replied, looking out of the window at the brightly lit event hall where Rachel was still working. And I think I finally know what I need to do. Nathan spent the next morning locked in his suite, holding discreet video conferences with his executive team. After hours of discussion, he finally came to a decision about Meridian Palace's events department, one that could change everything. Marcus, I want a full audit of the processes implemented by Rachel Mitchell, he instructed his finance director. Her innovations and cost reduction could be exactly what we need to apply across the board. As he walked down to the lobby, Nathan observed Rachel coordinating the last details of the Hamilton wedding. She looked tired, but her determination remained unwavering. His heart squeezed at the thought of how she would react when she discovered his true identity. Nathan, she smiled at the sight of him, and for a moment he forgot all his worries. I was just thinking about you. Do you want to see something amazing? Without waiting for an answer, Rachel led him into the ballroom, where her team was completing a spectacular makeover. The space had become an enchanted winter garden with delicate lights hanging from the ceiling like shooting stars. We were able to recreate this setting using recycled materials from previous events, she explained proudly. We saved almost 40% of the original budget. That's impressive, Nathan replied, genuinely amazed. How do you manage to maintain this level of quality with limited resources? Creativity and a dedicated team work miracles, she winked. Besides, every penny saved means we can make more dreams come true. The conversation was interrupted by James, the lighting technician, who needed Rachel's approval for some final adjustments. Nathan took a moment to observe her in action, noticing how she treated each member of the team with respect and attention. You really love this, don't you? He asked when they were alone again. Rachel leaned against one of the decorated columns, her face softening. More than I should, probably. Sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't be more pragmatic. What do you mean? Well, the numbers don't lie, she sighed. I know we're over budget. The CEO is probably looking at spreadsheets right now, deciding where to cut costs without understanding the real impact of these decisions. Nathan felt his stomach turn. What if he was closer to reality than you think? What do you mean? Nothing, he blurted out quickly. Just thinking out loud. Rachel's cell phone rang, saving Nathan from further explanations. It was his fiancée, Hamilton, panicking about a last-minute emergency. Rachel apologized and ran off, leaving Nathan alone with his conflicting thoughts. Later that day, during the wedding, Nathan watched discreetly from the back of the hall as Rachel coordinated every detail with military precision. The ceremony was perfect, and the reception flowed without any apparent problems. Will you dance with me? He asked, approaching Rachel when she finally stopped to take a breath. I shouldn't. I'm working. She hesitated, but her eyes betrayed her desire to accept. One dance, he insisted, holding out his hand. You deserve a break. Soft music filled the room as they moved slowly across the dance floor. Nathan could smell Rachel's soft perfume, notice every freckle on her face, notice how she gradually relaxed in his arms. You know, she murmured, there's something about you that makes me let my guard down. It's dangerous. Why? Because I have the feeling that you're going to disappear one day like all the other guests, she replied, her eyes meeting his. And I shouldn't care so much about that. The guilt hit Nathan like a punch in the gut. He needed to tell her the truth, but the moment seemed too perfect to ruin. Rachel, I need to tell you something, he began, but was interrupted by a loud bang followed by screams from the kitchen. Rachel immediately turned away, returning to professional mode. Nathan followed her into the kitchen, where they found a chaotic situation. The wedding cake had collapsed during the final transportation. Oh my God, the bride cried, having arrived before them. My wedding is ruined. Nathan watched in fascination as Rachel took control of the situation. Within minutes, she had mobilized her team, improvised a creative solution with other available sweets, and turned the disaster into a memorable moment for the bride and groom. How do you do it? He asked later when the crisis had passed. What do? I turn problems into opportunities. Keep calm when everything seems to be falling apart. Rachel smiled tiredly. Years of practice, and maybe a little madness. At that moment, watching Rachel reorganize her team, so naturally Nathan made his final decision about the events department. It wouldn't just be a question of numbers, it would be a revolution in the way the entire chain approached customer service. His phone vibrated with a message from Marcus. We need to announce the cuts tomorrow. Nathan typed his reply, change of plans. Get ready for an extraordinary board meeting. We're going to restructure the whole system. Nathan, Rachel's voice brought him back to reality. Is everything all right? He stared at her, feeling the weight of her secrets and the certainty of her decisions. I've never been better, he replied, knowing that tomorrow everything would change for better or worse. The morning of the big announcement arrived with a palpable tension in the air. Nathan had been up all night, revising his presentation to the board and mentally rehearsing how he would reveal his true identity to Rachel. The rising Miami sun painted the sky in golden hues, but he barely noticed the beauty of the moment, consumed by the anxiety of what was to come. Mr. Miller, there is a situation that requires your attention in the lobby, a voice announced over the room phone. Nathan frowned, confused. No one should need his attention as an ordinary guest. When he arrived in the lobby, he found a scene that made his heart soar. Rachel was arguing heatedly with Marcus Reynolds, her financial director, who had apparently arrived earlier than planned. Miss Mitchell, I insist that we need to have an immediate meeting about the changes in the department. Marcus was saying, his tone characteristically authoritarian. And I insist that I need more time to prepare my presentation on the optimizations we've implemented, Rachel replied firmly. The CEO deserves to see full figures, and the CEO is already here. Marcus interrupted, his eyes meeting Nathan's as he approached. Mr. Brooks, how nice of you to. The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel looked from Marcus to Nathan, her expression gradually changing from confusion to understanding and finally to hurt. Nathan Brooks, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. All this time, Rachel, I can explain. Nathan began, taking a step towards her, but she stepped back. You don't have to, she cut, her face hardening professionally. If you'll excuse me, I have an event to coordinate. Rachel, wait, Nathan called out, but she had already moved quickly away in the direction of the function room. Marcus sniffed uncomfortably. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't realize you were keeping your cover. It doesn't matter now, Nathan sighed, wiping his hand across his face. Let's get on with the plan. Gather the executive team in a conference room in an hour. As Marcus walked away, Nathan tried to find Rachel, but she seemed to have disappeared into the hotel's maze of corridors. He knew her well enough now to know that she would be taking refuge in her work, channeling her emotions into productivity. In the conference room, an hour later, Nathan presented his new vision for the hotel chain, using the Meridian Palace's events department as a model of innovation and efficiency. The cost-cutting measures implemented by Rachel would be studied and adapted for all the hotels in the chain. But the real revolution, he concluded, isn't a humanized approach I've witnessed here. We're not just selling rooms or events, we're creating memories, making dreams come true. And that has a value that can't be measured in spreadsheets. After the meeting, Nathan finally found Rachel in the hotel garden supervising the setup of an outdoor wedding. She maintained her impeccable professional posture, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. Can we talk? He asked softly, approaching. What about Mr. Brooks? She replied without looking at him, continuing to make notes on her tablet. About how you observed me as a guinea pig in your social experiment. Or about how you build a friendship based on lies, about how you changed my view of everything, he replied sincerely. Rachel, I came here to evaluate numbers processes efficiency, but you showed me the heart of this place. She finally faced him, her green eyes shining with a mixture of anger and hurt. Why didn't you tell me the truth? At first it was just a surprise inspection. But then, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Then I met you. The real you, without the pressure of talking to the CEO. And for the first time in years, someone saw me as just Nathan, not as the powerful executive. That doesn't justify the lie, she argued, but her voice had softened slightly. No, it doesn't, he agreed. But it allowed me to see something extraordinary, a professional who turns limitations into opportunities, who treats every event as a personal story, who inspires her team to give their best, not out of fear but out of respect. Rachel bit her lip, fighting back a reluctant smile. So what happens now? Now, Nathan smiled, handing her a folder. You become the director of event innovation for the entire Meridian network. If you accept, of course. Her eyes widened as she read the document. That's a promotion you more than deserve, he added. And also an apology. I know I betrayed your trust, Rachel, and I understand if you need time to process all this. But I hope we can start again, this time with complete honesty. And if I say no, she asked, raising an eyebrow, then I'll have lost not only an excellent professional, but also someone who in just a few days has become very important to me. A moment of silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sounds of the city and the rustling of palm trees in the wind. Rachel studied the document in her hands, then looked at Nathan with a puzzled expression. I'm gonna need some time, she finally said, to think about the promotion and about us. All the time you need, Nathan replied, sensing a thread of hope in her tone. Just know that CEO or not, that man who danced with you at the wedding, who was charmed by your passion for your work and your generous heart, that was the real me. Rachel nodded slightly, a small smile playing on her lips. We'll see, Mr. Brooks. We'll see. As she walked away to continue her work, Nathan remained in the garden watching as she transformed every detail of the space into something magical. Perhaps he thought some lies needed to be undone so that deeper truths could emerge. The news of Nathan Brooks' true identity spread through the Meridian Palace like fire through dry straw. The staff now greeted him with exaggerated reverence, completely losing the naturalness he had enjoyed so much during his disguise. It was as if an invisible curtain had descended between him and the world he had been able to experience as Nathan Miller. Rachel avoided him with a professional elegance that hurt him more than any direct confrontation. In the few moments when they had to interact, she kept a calculated distance, answering only what was necessary, and always in the presence of others. The promotion he had offered remained unanswered, the folder untouched on his desk. You need to give her time, Marcus advised during a morning meeting. It's not every day you find out that the guest you're falling for is actually your boss. Nathan glared at his financial director. I don't need advice about my personal life, Marcus. With all due respect, sir, you do, Marcus insisted, surprising Nathan with his frankness. Because right now your personal life is affecting important corporate decisions. It was true. Nathan had postponed several crucial meetings in New York to stay in Miami, hoping for an opportunity to really talk to Rachel. He watched from afar as she conducted the events with her usual efficiency, but he could see that something had changed. The sparkle in her eyes when she talked about her work seemed a little duller. One particularly busy afternoon, Nathan decided to take action. Rachel was organizing a charity event in the hotel garden, and he knew she couldn't just run away when he approached. We need to talk, he said, positioning himself next to her as he supervised the setting up of the tables. I'm busy, Mr. Brooks, she replied without taking her eyes off her clipboard. Rachel, please, his voice softened. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. She finally looked at him, and Nathan could see the conflict in her green eyes. 5 minutes, she agreed reluctantly. They walked to a more secluded corner of the garden, where the noise of the event setup was just a distant murmur. Rachel crossed her arms, a defensive posture that did not go unnoticed by Nathan. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, he began, and I've realized that even though it started with a lie, every moment we spent together was genuine. How can I be sure of that, she asked. How can I know if you were being sincere or just collecting data for your corporate experiment? Because for the first time in years I could just be myself, Nathan replied, taking a step towards her. Without the expectations, without the pressure of the job. When we danced at that wedding, when we talked about our dreams, when we shared that dinner on South Beach. It was just me, Rachel, a man completely enchanted by an incredible woman. Rachel looked away, but Nathan could see her defenses starting to drop. You have no idea how foolish I felt, she admitted. I went over every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out if there were any signs I should have noticed. The only thing you should have realized is that I was falling in love with you, Nathan said softly. And I still am. The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of glasses breaking in the event area. Rachel instinctively turned in the direction of the noise, her professional instincts overriding her personal moment. I need to sort this out, she said, but hesitated before turning away. As for the promotion, it's yours for the taking, Nathan interrupted her. Regardless of anything between us, you've revolutionized the way we see events across the network. It would be a mistake not to recognize that. Rachel nodded slowly. I need a few more days to think about everything. As long as you need, Nathan replied, watching her walk away to solve the broken cup crisis. In the days that followed, Nathan kept his distance, but implemented significant changes to the hotel based on the observations he had made during his disguise. Each change was silent proof of how Rachel had influenced his vision of hospitality. A week later, he found an envelope on his desk. Inside was the promotion documentation signed by Rachel, along with a note, I accept the position. As for the rest, how about dinner this time with complete honesty? Our Nathan couldn't contain the smile that spread across his face. He picked up his phone and typed a message, same place in South Beach, I promise I won't pretend to be a failed writer this time. The reply came almost immediately, 8 p.m. And for the record, you weren't such a bad writer. That evening, when Rachel entered the small Cuban restaurant, Nathan was already waiting for her. She looked stunning in a green dress that highlighted her eyes, but what impressed him most was seeing her genuine smile return. So, she said, taking a seat, I think we should start at the beginning. Hi, I'm Rachel Mitchell, your new director of event innovation. Nathan smiled, taking his cue. Nathan Burke, CEO, in love with his most brilliant employee. Nice to finally meet you for real. And so between plates of ropa vieja and stories now told without filters or disguises, they began to rebuild something that, despite having started with a lie, promised to turn into something much truer and deeper than either of them could have imagined. Monday morning brought a different energy to the Meridian Palace. Rachel arrived earlier than usual, her first official day as Director of Event Innovation. Her office had been moved to the 10th floor with a panoramic view of Miami Beach that made her heart race every time she looked out of the window. Good morning, Ms. Mitchell. Her new assistant Lisa smiled as she entered with a stack of documents. Mr. Brooks has requested your presence at the executive meeting at 9 a.m. Rachel felt that familiar chill in her stomach when she heard Nathan's name. After dinner at the Cuban restaurant, they had established a tacit agreement to maintain professionalism at work, but the chemistry between them was undeniable and at times almost impossible to ignore. Thanks, Lisa, she replied, unconsciously adjusting her navy blue blazer. Can you prepare the implementation reports for us to present? As she organized her notes for the meeting, Rachel reflected on how drastically her life had changed in the last few weeks. From events manager to corporate director, from a casual relationship with a so-called writer to, well, whatever that was with Nathan now. The meeting room was full when she arrived. Nathan was already there leading a discussion about international expansion. Their gazes met briefly, and Rachel felt that now familiar warmth creep up her neck. Rachel, please. Nathan gestured for her to sit on his right. We were just discussing how to implement your innovations in our international properties. Over the next hour, Rachel presented her methods for optimizing resources and humanizing service. It was strange to see her ideas born out of the daily need to do more with less, being treated as revolutionary by senior executives. Impressive, commented an operations director from Los Angeles. But how do we ensure that quality is not compromised by these cost reductions? The issue isn't reducing costs by sacrificing quality, Rachel replied confidently. It's about rethinking processes to eliminate waste and maximize resources. For example, she continued her explanation, aware of Nathan's look of approval. After the meeting, as the executives dispersed, he called her discreetly. Lunch on the terrace, he suggested quietly. We need to discuss the implementation in Chicago. Rachel knew that discussing the implementation in Chicago was just an excuse, but she nodded. Noon. The terrace of the Meridian Palace was an oasis of tranquility in the bustling heart of Miami. Elegantly arranged tables offered enough privacy for discreet conversations while the sea breeze softened the midday heat. "You were amazing at the meeting," Nathan commented as he poured himself a lemon water. "Did you see how impressed Marcus was when you explained the decoration reuse system?" Rachel smiled, relaxing a little. "It's still weird, having people who used to bully me now asking for my opinion." "You've always been brilliant, Rachel. The only difference is that now everyone can see it." "Everyone or you?" she teased, surprising herself with her boldness. Nathan leaned slightly across the table. "I've always seen it, even when I was pretending to be a failed writer." "About that," Rachel played with the napkin in her lap. "How are we going to make this work, Nathan? You're my boss." "Technically," he corrected, "the council is your boss. I'm just a colleague who's very interested in your success." The arrival of the waiter interrupted the conversation momentarily. After they had placed their orders, Rachel took up the subject again. "I'm serious. People are already commenting. This morning, I overheard 2 receptionists whispering about how I got the promotion." Nathan's expression hardened. "Do you want me to know?" she interrupted him. "I need to earn my place on my own merits, without interference. That's why I fell in love with you," he said softly, making her heart leap. "Your integrity, your strength." "Nathan, I'm sorry," he retorted, realizing that he had let his professionalism slip. "You're right. Let's focus on the work." The rest of lunch was spent discussing the implementation of the new procedures in Chicago, but the tension between them remained palpable. When they had finished, Rachel got up to leave, but Nathan gently held her wrist. "Dinner tonight?" he asked quietly. "Outside the hotel, away from prying eyes." Rachel hesitated. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Please," he insisted. "We need to find a balance between this," he gestured between them, "and our responsibilities here." After a moment's thought, she nodded. "Okay, but this time I choose the place." That evening, Rachel took him to a small bistro in Coral Gables, far enough away from the Meridian Palace to allow them to relax. Dressed in a simple black dress, she seemed more at ease, closer to the Rachel Nathan had met during his disguise. "You know what I miss most?" she commented after the first glass of wine. "The simplicity. When you were just Nathan Miller, and I was just the events manager in love with your work." "And for a mystery writer," he teased, making her laugh. "Also," she admitted, blushing slightly. "But now everything is so complicated." Nathan reached across the table, interlacing his fingers with hers. "It doesn't have to be. We can find our own way." "How?" "One day at a time," he replied. "By being professional at work, by being ourselves outside of work, and above all, by being honest with each other." Rachel squeezed his hand, gently feeling the truth in his words. Perhaps she thought the complex could become simple again, if only they would let it. "One day at a time," she repeated, raising her glass in a silent toast to the future they were beginning to build together. A week after dinner in the bistro, Rachel faced her first big challenge as innovation director. An international technology conference had asked Meridian Palace to host its main event with over 1,000 participants and complex technical requirements that would test the limits of her new approach to resource optimization. "It's impossible to keep costs within the proposed budget," Marcus declared during the morning meeting, sliding a detailed spreadsheet across the conference table. "The technical demands are extraordinary." Rachel remained calm, aware of Nathan's presence on the other side of the table. "Nothing is impossible, just challenging," she replied, flipping through the proposal. "I can present a solution by tomorrow." In her new office, Rachel immersed herself in her work, ignoring Nathan's personal messages on her cell phone. She needed to prove herself, especially now that rumors about her relationship with the CEO were circulating in the hotel corridors. Lisa called her assistant. "I need the reports of all the technology events we've held in the last 2 years." As she analyzed the data, an idea began to form. Rachel picked up the phone and made several calls to her old contacts in the events sector. As the day progressed, her plan took shape. Nathan showed up at her office in the late afternoon, closing the doors softly behind him. "You ignored my invitations to lunch." "I've been busy," she replied without taking her eyes off the documents. "This conference is crucial to establishing my credibility in my new position." "Rachel," he approached her desk, "no one doubts your competence. You don't hear the whispers in the corridors she finally faced him, or the theories about how I got this promotion. Nathan frowned, clearly upset. Do you want me to interfere? No, she replied quickly. That would only make things worse. I need to solve this my way. A tense silence settled between them. Nathan looked at the dozens of documents scattered across the table, the colorful post-its covering an entire wall, the half-caff coffee already cold. At least let me bring you some dinner, he offered. You need to eat. Rachel hesitated, then nodded slightly. That's fine, but here in the office, I need to finish this. 2 hours later, between Thai food boxes and more coffee, Rachel finally smiled, satisfied with her plan. Nathan, who had remained silently working on his laptop on the office sofa, raised his eyebrows curiously. Have you found your impossible solution better? She replied, her eyes shining with that intensity he so admired. I found a way to turn this event into a model for the entire network. The next morning, Rachel presented her proposal to the executive board. Her plan involved an innovative partnership with 3 other local technology companies who would provide some of the necessary equipment in exchange for exposure during the event. In addition, she continued, her confidence growing with each slide. We can turn some areas of the hotel into permanent technology showrooms, generating additional revenue throughout the year. Marcus, initially skeptical, began furiously taking notes. Nathan maintained his professional expression, but Rachel could see the pride in his eyes. Impressive, Ms. Mitchell, one of the directors commented. But how can we guarantee that the quality of the service won't be compromised with so many adaptations? Excellent question, Rachel smiled, moving on to the next slide. I developed a cross-training system for our staff. Each employee will be trained in multiple roles, increasing our operational flexibility at no extra cost. The presentation was an absolute success. As the last executive left the room, Nathan closed the door and turned to Rachel with a beaming smile. You're amazing, he said simply. It's my job, she replied, but couldn't hold back a smile. At dinner with me tonight, he asked, stepping closer to celebrate properly. Nathan, she hesitated. People? To hell with people, he interrupted softly. You've just proved your worth beyond question. Besides, he smiled mischievously, I know a discreet place in Key Biscayne where no one from the hotel will see us. Rachel considered for a moment. She had won a significant victory today, proving her professional worth regardless of her relationship with Nathan. Perhaps she deserved a little celebration. Key Biscayne, she asked with a smile. Seems far enough away. That evening in a small restaurant by the sea, Rachel finally relaxed for the first time in days. The sound of the waves and the sea breeze created an intimate atmosphere very different from the formality of the hotel. How did you discover this place? She asked, savoring her seafood risotto. I came here once years ago, when I was starting out on the net, Nathan replied, his gaze distant. I was young, scared of responsibilities, needing a place to fake. And now, he smiled, reaching his hand across the table. I wanted to share this place with someone special. Rachel entwined her fingers in his, feeling that familiar electric current that always arose when they touched. Thank you, she said softly, for believing in me. Always, he replied simply. The drive back to the hotel was filled with light conversation about future plans, both professional and personal. When they reached the parking lot, Nathan leaned in for a goodnight kiss, but Rachel stopped him. Wait, she smiled. I have a better idea. Taking his hand, she led him into the hotel garden, now silent and lit only by the moon and a few decorative lights. This is where you first tried to tell me the truth, she said softly. Maybe it's time to create a new memory in this place. And there, under the starry Miami sky, they sealed with a kiss the promise of a future where professionalism and love could coexist in perfect balance. The tranquility of the last few weeks was interrupted when Marcus rushed into Rachel's office on a Thursday morning. The finance director bore a worried expression that she had rarely seen before. We have a problem, he announced without preamble. The technology conference leaked information about our partnerships to the competition. The Palazzo Resort is offering even better conditions to host the event. Rachel felt her stomach sink. The technology event was her first major achievement as innovation director, her chance to prove her worth regardless of her relationship with Nathan. How much time do we have? They've given us 48 hours to submit a counterproposal, Marcus replied, handing her a document. And the board wants an emergency meeting in an hour. While Rachel was going through the numbers, her phone vibrated with a message from Nathan. "I just heard. I'm on my way." She ignored the message, concentrating on the spreadsheets in front of her. This was a battle she had to win on her own. Lisa, her assistant, entered with a cup of coffee. "The conference representatives are in the lobby, Ms. Mitchell. They want to speak to you personally." "Great." Rachel took a deep breath, adjusting her navy blazer. Showtime. In the lobby, she met 3 conference executives, including Michael Davidson, the CEO she had impressed in her initial presentation. "Mr. Davidson," she greeted with a professional smile. "Can we talk in my office?" "Actually," Davidson interrupted. "We prefer to discuss this at the Palazzo. They've invited us for a tour of the facilities this afternoon." Rachel felt the blow but kept her composure. "I understand. But before you make any decisions, I'd like to show you something we've prepared especially for you." She led them not to her office, but to the hotel's main hall, where her team had set up a surprise demonstration of the technologies that would be implemented. Interactive screens showed 3D visualizations of the customized spaces, and a virtual reality area allowed visitors to experience what the event would be like. "Impressive," Davidson muttered, testing one of the devices. "But the Palazzo can offer a bigger discount," Rachel added. "But can they offer that?" She activated a command on her tablet, and the entire hall was transformed into a light and sound show with holograms, creating an immersive experience that left the executive stunned. Nathan chose this moment to appear, stopping at the entrance to the hall. Their gazes met briefly, and Rachel saw in them a mixture of pride and concern. "Ms. Mitchell," Davidson turned to her after the demonstration, "this is extraordinary. But we still need to consider Palazzo's proposal." "Of course," she smiled confidently. "But before you go, I have one more thing to show you." Rachel took them to the terrace, where an outdoor networking area had been set up with sustainable workstations powered by solar energy and a natural climate control system that significantly reduced energy consumption. "We're not just offering a space for your conference," she explained. "We're proposing a partnership that demonstrates in practice the commitment to innovation and sustainability that your company stands for." Davidson exchanged meaningful glances with his colleagues. "We need to discuss it internally. You'll have our answer by tomorrow." After the executives had left, Rachel finally allowed her shoulders to relax. Nathan approached, keeping an appropriately professional distance. "You were amazing," he said softly. "We haven't won yet," she replied, massaging her temples. "It doesn't matter," Nathan insisted. "What you did here today, Rachel, you've turned a crisis into an opportunity to show exactly why you're the right person for this job." Before she could reply, Marcus appeared with more news. Palazzo had increased its offer again. Rachel felt her frustration growing, but refused to show it. "I need an hour," she said, heading for her office. Nathan made a point of following her, but she shook her head subtly. This was her moment to prove herself, and she needed to do it alone. In her office, Rachel worked furiously on a new proposal. Not only would she keep the technological innovations presented, but she would also include a mentoring program for local startups during the conference, turning the event into an innovation hub that would benefit the entire community. By the time he finished, it was past 9 in the evening. He found Nathan waiting patiently in his own office, 2 cups of coffee on the table. "You shouldn't be here so late," she commented, accepting the coffee. "I couldn't be anywhere else," he replied simply. "How's the proposal? Honest, ambitious, and completely different from anything the Palazzo can offer?" Nathan smiled that smile that still made his heart race. "Just like you." The next morning, Rachel presented her final proposal to the conference executives. When she finished, the silence in the room was palpable. While Davidson finally said, "I don't think we need to go to the Palazzo today." The relief and joy Rachel felt was almost overwhelming, but she maintained her professional posture until the executives left. Only then did she allow a real smile to light up her face. Nathan met her later in the hotel garden, her special place. "Dinner to celebrate," he suggested. Rachel considered for a moment, then smiled. "How about a coffee on the terrace? I still had a lot of work to do to make all this a reality." "Even better," Nathan replied, understanding perfectly. That was what he admired most about her dedication, her strength, her professional integrity. As they walked up to the terrace together, keeping an appropriate distance, they both knew that they had found a delicate balance between the personal and the professional, a balance that, like Rachel herself, was both challenging and extraordinary. The morning at the Meridian Palace began with an unusual buzz. The technology conference was in full swing, transforming the elegant hotel into an innovation hub that attracted curious eyes from all over Miami. Rachel oversaw every detail with military precision, aware that this event would define her reputation as director of innovation. The motion sensors in the West Sector aren't synchronizing properly, Lisa informed her, running up to her with a tablet. And Mr. Davidson wants to add a surprise presentation in 15 minutes. Rachel remained calm, years of event management experience guiding her actions. Redirect the technical team to the West Sector and prepare the Coral Hall for the presentation. We'll use contingency plan B. As she crossed the main lobby, she noticed Nathan in a discreet video conference near the fountain. He looked tense, his expression more serious than usual. Their gazes met briefly, and she realized that something important was happening. Ms. Mitchell, Michael Davidson cut her off. I need to discuss some changes to next week's schedule. Of course, she smiled professionally, pushing her concern for Nathan to the back of her mind. Can we talk in my office? The meeting with Davidson stretched on for 2 hours, during which Rachel skillfully negotiated changes to the program without compromising on quality or budget. When she finally got a moment's respite, she found 3 messages from Nathan on her cell phone. We need to talk. It's important. She found him in his office on the top floor, the view of Miami Beach serving as a backdrop to his worried expression. What happened? The board wants to expand the technological innovation program to the entire network. He began, gesturing for her to sit down. Your success here has attracted a lot of attention. That's great, isn't it? Rachel asked, sensing that there was more to the story. It's complicated, Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. They wanted to supervise the implementation personally. That means constant travel, she added, understanding the implication. For how long? 6 months minimum. Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, Boston. He listed, his voice betraying a mixture of professional pride and personal apprehension. Rachel stood up, walking over to the window. The afternoon sun painted the ocean in shades of golden sight that normally calmed her. It's an incredible opportunity, she murmured. You deserve it, Nathan said softly, stepping closer. No one questions your competence or how you got to this position anymore. But she turned to face him. But I'm selfish enough to want you around, he admitted, keeping a professional distance even when his eyes revealed so much more. Rachel felt her heart squeeze. Over the last few weeks, they had found a delicate balance between the professional and the personal. Discreet dinners, stolen moments in the hotel garden, and occasional dance at events, always keeping up appearances, always aware of the watchful eyes of the staff. When do you need an answer? She asked, returning to professional mode. Monday, Nathan replied. The board meets at 9 a.m. A knock on the door interrupted them. Lisa, with yet another conference emergency. Rachel nodded briefly to Nathan before leaving, both realizing that this conversation was far from over. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and problem-solving. At 9 in the evening, when the last conference participant left the hotel, Rachel finally allowed her shoulders to relax. Dinner, Nathan's voice sounded behind her. You need to eat something. She considered refusing, diving into work to avoid the decision she needed to make, but nodded. The Cuban place. An hour later, sitting at their usual table in the small restaurant away from the hotel, they finally let down their professional guards. Remember the first time we came here? Nathan asked, pouring more wine into their glasses. When I was still just a mystery writer, Rachel smiled at the memory. You were terrible at lying about being a writer, you know that you always talked about hotels with too much knowledge. And you still didn't find out, he teased. Maybe I didn't want to find out, she admitted softly. It was easier when you were just Nathan Miller. The silence that followed carried the weight of her pending decision. Nathan reached his hand across the table, a gesture that now seemed as natural as breathing. 6 months goes by fast, he offered. That's enough time to build up a solid reputation on the net. She replied, her professional side emerging. Or to realize that some distances are too long. Rachel, Nathan squeezed her hand gently. I'm not worried about the distance. I'm worried about you abandoning your dreams because of what we have. She stared at him in surprise. Do you think I would do that? I think you're the most dedicated and passionate person I've ever met, he smiled. And that's why you need to accept this opportunity. Even if it means video calling, dinners, and running weekends between cities, he added. We've built something special, Rachel. It's not going to disappear just because you're chasing your dreams. At that moment, watching Nathan through the soft candlelight, Rachel felt a certainty forming in her heart. Their relationship had started with a lie, but had evolved into something much deeper and truer than either of them could have imagined. Monday, she finally said, "I'll accept the offer." Nathan's smile lit up his whole face. "And on Sunday I will have dinner here again. To celebrate." "To celebrate," she agreed, raising her glass in a silent toast to the future that awaited them, a future that, although uncertain, promised to be as challenging as it was exciting. The official announcement of Rachel's promotion to National Supervisor of the Technological Innovation Program caused exactly the buzz she had hoped for at the Meridian Palace. Amid sincere congratulations and envious glances, she maintained her characteristic professional attitude, focusing on preparations for her first trip to Chicago. The documents for the temporary transfer are ready, Lisa informed her, handing over a folder full of papers. "And the corporate apartment in Chicago is already booked." Rachel nodded, looking at the pile of work she needed to organize before her departure next week. The technology conference had been a resounding success, but there were still many details to finalize. Miss Mitchell Marcus appeared at her door. "The board has requested a detailed report on the implementation of the program in each property. They want projected figures for the next 6 months." "Of course," she replied, remaining calm even as her stomach churned. "I'll have it ready by tomorrow." When Marcus left, Rachel allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. 6 months away from Miami, away from Nathan. The reality of her decision began to weigh more heavily with each passing hour. A soft knock on the door brought her back to reality. Nathan was standing there holding 2 coffee cups. "Thought you might need that," he smiled, closing the door behind him. "How's the planning going?" "Honestly," she sighed, accepting coffee. "It's daunting. Not because of the complexity of the work, but because of the change," he added, sitting down in the chair opposite her desk. "I know. I went through it at the start of my career." Rachel took a sip of her coffee, allowing the warmth to comfort her. "How did you deal with it?" "By focusing on the bigger goal," Nathan replied, his gaze softening. "And having someone special to come back to." The comment made Rachel blush slightly. Over the last few weeks since her decision to accept the position, they had become closer, even though they kept a low profile in a professional environment. Speaking of which, she changed the subject. "I need your approval for some changes to the program in Chicago. The hotel there has a different structure to ours." Nathan smiled at her attempt to remain professional. "Send the documents to my office. I'll review them today." When he left, Rachel plunged into her work, determined to get everything organized before her departure. The hours passed quickly, and soon the sun was setting over Miami Beach. "Rachel," Lisa reappeared. "Your team has organized a little farewell on the terrace. They insist you need a break." On the terrace, Rachel found not only her immediate team, but staff from various departments. Maria, the decorator she had mentioned to Nathan months ago, had prepared a cake. James, the lighting technician, had set up a small light system that transformed the space into something magical. "We couldn't let you leave without a proper celebration." Lisa smiled, handing him a glass of champagne. Nathan arrived discreetly, keeping to the sidelines of the celebration, but his eyes never left Rachel. She glowed under the terrace lights, accepting hugs and good wishes with natural grace. A toast Marcus proposed, surprising everyone with his presence. "To Rachel Mitchell, who taught us that innovation is not just about technology, but about heart." The words of the ever-pragmatic CFO moved Rachel more than she expected. Looking around at the smiling faces of her team, she realized how much Meridian Palace had become her home. Later, when the party began to disperse, Nathan found her alone near the edge of the terrace watching the city lights. "They really love you," he commented softly. "I'm going to miss them," she replied, allowing a little of her vulnerability to shine through. "All of it? It's only temporary," Nathan reminded her, moving close enough for their arms to touch lightly. "And you're going to do something extraordinary." Rachel turned to face him, aware that they were alone on the terrace. "Do you promise to visit me in Chicago as often as possible?" He smiled. "Coincidentally, we have several important meetings scheduled there over the next few months." "Coincidentally?" She arched an eyebrow, a smile playing on her lips. "Purely professional, of course," he winked. The moment was interrupted by Lisa, who needed Rachel's signature on some urgent documents. The reality of their imminent departure returned with full force. Dinner tomorrow, Nathan asked as she prepared to leave. Our place. Rachel nodded, feeling that familiar warmth in her chest that only he provoked. Our place. Back in her office, finalizing the last preparations, Rachel found a small package on her desk. Inside was a delicate silver chain with a key-shaped pendant. The note read simply, "Never forget that you'll always have a place to come back to." Rachel touched the pendant gently, allowing a single tear to escape. In a week's time, she would embark on a new professional adventure, leaving behind the hotel that had become her home and the man who had captured her heart. But looking out the window at the Meridian Palace illuminated against the Miami night sky, she knew she had made the right decision. Sometimes leaving is necessary in order to grow, and some distances only serve to strengthen the bonds that really matter. Miami International Airport was exceptionally busy that Monday morning. Rachel was waiting in the boarding area, her laptop open and showing a presentation she had to give in Chicago in less than 6 hours. The chain with the key pendant Nathan had given her rested around her neck, a constant reminder of what she was leaving behind. "Last call for Flight 457 to Chicago," announced the metallic voice on the PA system. Rachel started to gather her things when she felt a familiar presence behind her. "Did you think I'd let you go without a proper goodbye?" Nathan smiled, looking slightly out of breath, as if he'd just run through the airport. "You have a board meeting in 20 minutes, she replied, trying to maintain her professional composure, even as her heart raced. "The board can wait," he shrugged, handing her a small package. "For the trip." Inside the package, Rachel found her favorite croissant from the French bakery near the Meridian Palace, along with a handwritten note that she quickly tucked into her pocket, promising to read only when she was in the air. "Mr. Brooks," Marcus suddenly appeared, looking apologetic for interrupting the moment. "The video conference with the investors. I'm coming," Nathan nodded, turning to Rachel. "Show them in Chicago what you're capable of." Rachel watched as he walked away with Marcus, maintaining the professional posture they had both perfected over the last few weeks. Only his eyes, meeting hers one last time before disappearing into the crowd, revealed the depth of his feelings. On the plane, when they finally reached cruising altitude, Rachel allowed herself to open Nathan's note. "Dear Rachel, 6 months ago, I walked into the Meridian Palace pretending to be someone I wasn't, trying to evaluate numbers and processes. Instead, I met someone who taught me the true value of authenticity. This isn't goodbye, it's the start of a new chapter for both of us. Chicago doesn't know how lucky it is. Love, Nathan." In Chicago, the cold fall weather welcomed her with a sharp gust of wind. The hotel driver was waiting for her with a discreet sign, and during the drive to the Grand Meridian, Rachel mentally reviewed her presentation. "Welcome to Chicago, Ms. Mitchell," the general manager Alexandra Cooper greeted her in the lobby. "We look forward to implementing your innovations here." The next few hours were a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and tours of the facilities. Rachel immediately noticed the structural differences she would need to adapt in her program, but she also saw potential she hadn't even imagined. "Your reputation precedes you," commented one of the managers during the executive lunch. "The success of the conference in Miami is on everyone's lips in the industry." Rachel smiled politely, but her thoughts momentarily flew to Nathan, wondering if he was watching her presentation remotely as he had promised. In the evening, in her corporate apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, Rachel finally allowed exhaustion to catch up with her. Her phone vibrated with a message from Nathan. "Watch your presentation. Brilliant as always. The board is impressed." She smiled, typing her reply. "Thank you for making me believe this was possible." "You're the one who made it happen," he replied quickly. "How's the apartment?" "Lonely," she admitted, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. "But the view is incredible. Wait until you see Friday's sunset," Nathan replied, making her heart leap. "I have a coincidental meeting in Chicago." The next few days passed in a blur of intense activity. Rachel plunged into work, determined to prove that her promotion was based solely on merit. Her innovative approach began to win admirers in Chicago, and soon other hotels in the chain began to ask her for advice. "You've transformed this place in just 1 week," Alexander commented on Friday, noting the changes already implemented in the events sector. "How can you see possibilities where others see only limitations?" "I learned from someone special that sometimes we need to lose ourselves in order to find ourselves," Rachel replied, thinking about how her own path had changed since meeting Nathan. That evening when Nathan arrived at the restaurant on the top floor of the hotel, Rachel was already waiting for him. He looked tired from the trip, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "Chicago suits you," he commented, taking a seat. "Miami is still my home," she replied softly, touching the pin around his neck. 5 months and 3 weeks, Nathan smiled. "Not that I'm counting." Dinner was filled with a mixture of professional discussions and carefully guarded moments of intimacy. Rachel told us about her projects in Chicago, and Nathan shared the latest news from the Meridian Palace. "Lisa is keeping her office exactly as you left it," he mentioned. "I think she's counting the days as much as I am." As the evening drew to a close, they walked down to the pier, watching the city lights reflected in the lake. The cold Chicago wind made Rachel shiver slightly, and Nathan put his coat over his shoulders without hesitation. "Was it worth it?" he asked softly. Leaving Miami, starting over here, Rachel looked at him, seeing not just the powerful CEO she had met undercover, but the man she had learned to genuinely love. "Every moment," she replied with conviction, "because some distances help us to see more clearly what really matters." Nathan smiled, understanding perfectly what she meant. In silence, they continued to watch the Chicago skyline, knowing that although separated by thousands of kilometers, they had never been so close in purpose and heart. 3 months had passed since Rachel had left Miami, and the Chicago winter was showing its claws with snow and sub-zero temperatures. From her office window at the Grand Meridian, she watched the white flakes dancing in the air, so different from the tropical breeze she was used to. Ms. Mitchell Alexandra rushed in. "The hotel in Seattle is on the line. They need urgent advice on implementing the integrated events system." Rachel smiled, already used to the emergencies that arose on a daily basis. Her innovation program had spread through the Meridian chain like a positive virus, each hotel wanting to replicate the success she had achieved in Miami and Chicago. "Put them on video conference," she instructed, adjusting her gray blazer. "And please prepare the comparative reports for the last quarter. The board wants a full update tomorrow." While guiding the Seattle team, Rachel noticed a notification on her cell phone, a photo of the Meridian Palace garden that Nathan had just sent. "Your favorite place misses you," the message read. She instinctively touched the key-shaped pendant around her neck, allowing herself a moment of nostalgia. The last few weeks had been a roller coaster of emotions and professional achievements. The meetings with Nathan, although precious, were brief and spaced out, a meeting in Denver here, a conference in Boston there. They had become masters at stealing moments together between corporate commitments. Rachel Alexander interrupted her thoughts. "There's something you need to see." On her computer screen, an article in Hospitality Today magazine highlighted the Meridian chain's innovation program as a success story in the hotel industry. Her name appeared prominently along with a photo of her during the technology conference in Miami. "Congratulations," Alexander smiled. "You deserve all the recognition." Rachel barely had time to process the news when her phone rang. It was Marcus. "The board is impressed," he said without preamble. "They want to expand the program internationally. London, Dubai, Singapore." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. International expansion would mean more travel, more time away from Miami, away from Nathan. "When do you need an answer?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "At tomorrow's meeting," Marcus replied. Mr. Brooks requested your presence in person in Miami for the presentation." Miami. The name of the city made his stomach turn. He hadn't been back since his departure, although every corner of the Meridian Palace remained vivid in his memory. "I'll book a flight for tonight," she decided, starting to organize her documents. Hours later, as her plane cut through the clouds heading south, Rachel reviewed her presentation, but her thoughts kept returning to Nathan. They hadn't seen each other in person for 3 weeks since a brief meeting in New York. The Meridian Palace was exactly as she remembered it, its lights shining against the Miami night sky. Rachel felt a lump in her throat as she passed through the garden, now decorated with small lights for the Floridian winter. "Welcome back," a familiar voice greeted her. Nathan was standing near the fountain, his features soft under the subdued lighting. "You should have been home hours ago," she commented, trying to ignore how her heart raced just by seeing him. "Some things are more important than sleep," he smiled, stepping closer, like properly welcoming our most brilliant director of innovation. Rachel allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, letting Nathan hug her briefly. The familiar scent of his cologne, mixed with coffee, made her realize how much she had really missed him. "Marcus told me about the international expansion," she said as they walked away. "It's an incredible opportunity," Nathan replied, leading her into the hotel. "But it's up to you." In the elevator, Rachel looked at her reflection next to Nathan's. He seemed stronger, more confident. Than 3 months ago, but there was also a certain melancholy in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Dinner," Nathan suggested when they reached his floor. "We still have a lot to discuss." "Our place," she smiled, knowing he would understand the reference. An hour later, sitting at their usual table in the small Cuban restaurant, they finally let down their professional guards. "How's it really going?" Nathan asked, pouring wine for them both. "Chicago, the trips, all that." Rachel considered the question for a moment. "Challenging, gratifying, lonely at times. Only sometimes," he teased gently. "All the time," she admitted, meeting his eyes. "But I also know that I'm doing something important, something that goes beyond both of us." Nathan reached across the table, entwining his fingers with hers. "That's why I fell in love with you. You know, your dedication, your strength." "Nathan," she interrupted softly, "about the international expansion." "I know," he sighed, "more time apart." Or Rachel took a deep breath. An opportunity to do it together. Nathan stared at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking," she continued. "Why not turn this into a joint project? You also need to visit international properties regularly. We could synchronize our schedules, combine work with us," he added, a smile spreading across his face. "With us," she confirmed, squeezing his hand. At that moment, sitting in their little refuge away from the corporate spotlight, they began to plan not only the expansion of a business program, but also the future of their relationship. The distance that had tested their love would now become the way to keep them together. The board meeting was taking place on the top floor of the Meridian Palace with a panoramic view of the Miami Ocean. Rachel stood before the executives, presenting her vision for the international expansion of the innovation program with the same confidence that had brought her there. "The results in Chicago exceeded all expectations," she explained, moving on to the next slide. "The implementation of the integrated system resulted in a 45% increase in operational efficiency and a 30% reduction in costs." Marcus, sitting near the head of the table, nodded in approval as he took notes. Nathan maintained his professional expression, but Rachel could see the gleam of pride in his eyes. "And how do you intend to manage international expansion while maintaining these standards of excellence?" asked one of the directors. Rachel smiled, exchanging a quick glance with Nathan. "Through a collaborative approach. I propose a direct partnership with the presidency to align implementations with the network's strategic vision." The presentation went on for another hour, with Rachel answering every question with the confidence of someone who knew her job inside out. When it was over, the mood in the room was palpably enthusiastic. "Impressive, Ms. Mitchell," the chairman of the board commented. "The board unanimously approves the international expansion under your direction." After the room had emptied, Nathan closed the door, finally allowing his professional smile to turn into something more genuine. "You've completely won them over." "We won them over," she corrected, allowing herself to relax. "This plan only works if we work together." Speaking of which, Nathan approached, pulling an envelope from his inside jacket pocket. "I have something for you." Inside the envelope, Rachel found 2 plane tickets to London, dated for 2 weeks later. "The first stop on our international journey," he explained. "The Meridian London will be our pilot project." 2 weeks, she arched an eyebrow. "I barely have time to organize the transition in Chicago." "Alexandra is more than ready to take over," Nathan smiled. "In fact, she's been managing very well over the last few weeks, hasn't she?" Rachel nodded, realizing that her mentoring had paid off beyond expectations. Alexandra had become not only a competent manager, but a true innovator in her own right. Before London, Nathan continued, "How about having dinner with me tonight? I have a surprise." "More surprises," she teased. "I thought the tickets were the surprise. Let's just say I have plans to make our partnership even more permanent." Rachel's heart raced at the implication of those words, but before she could reply, her phone vibrated with an urgent message from Seattle. "Go," Nathan smiled, understanding. "Sort out whatever you need to. I'll meet you at 8 at our place." The rest of the day passed in a blur of video conferences and preparations. Rachel coordinated with Alexander on the transition in Chicago, updated the Seattle team on the new protocols, and finalized the last details of the report to the board. At 8 o'clock sharp, she entered the familiar Cuban restaurant, now decorated with small lights that created an even more welcoming atmosphere than usual. Nathan was waiting for her at his usual table, but something was different. The atmosphere seemed more intimate, more special. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" he asked after the waiter had poured the wine. "How could I forget you were a terrible writer trying to impress an events manager?" And now he smiled, reaching his hand across the table. "Now you're a CEO still trying to impress an innovation director?" She joked, but her voice softened at the end. Actually, Nathan stood up, surprising her by kneeling down next to her. "Now I'm just a man who discovered that sometimes we need to get lost to find exactly what we're looking for." Rachel felt tears forming in her eyes as he took a small velvet box out of his pocket. Inside was a delicate platinum ring with a single diamond that caught the candlelight. "Rachel Mitchell," he continued, his voice tinged with emotion, "you taught me that authenticity is more valuable than any professional success. That true love can be born out of even the most unlikely circumstances. That distance is just a number when hearts are truly connected. Would you agree to turn our partnership into something eternal?" For a moment, Rachel was speechless, memories of the last few months flashing through her mind like a movie. Their first meeting, when he was Nathan Miller, the dance, at the wedding, the discoveries, the goodbyes, the reunions in different cities, every moment leading up to it. "Yes," she finally answered, her voice barely containing the emotion. 1,000 times yes. When Nathan slid the ring onto her finger, applause erupted throughout the restaurant. Rachel then realized that all the familiar faces were there. Lisa, Marcus, Alexandra, who had flown in from Chicago, especially for the occasion, her team, from the Meridian Palace, all those who had been part of her journey. "You planned all this," she smiled through her tears. "With a little help," he admitted, pointing to Lisa, who was smiling proudly from across the room. "Some surprises deserve an audience." The rest of the evening was filled with celebrations, hugs, and plans for the future. Between London and Dubai, between corporate innovations and personal moments, between professional challenges and promises of love, Rachel and Nathan had found their own unique balance. Later, walking along Miami Beach, under the starry sky, Rachel played with the ring on her finger, the key pendant still around her neck, two symbols of a journey that began with a lie but blossomed into the purest truth. "Ready for our next adventure?" Nathan asked, entwining his fingers in hers. Rachel looked at the man next to her, no longer the disguised CEO or the pretended writer, but simply Nathan, her partner in every sense of the word. "With you always." And so, under the stars of Miami, where it had all begun, they sealed not just a commitment of love, but a promise that some stories, even if they begin unexpectedly, can end exactly as they should.